we have 4 amazing companies that have traveled from all over the world to present here today. They are going to give a 5-minute pitch followed by 5-minute Q&A. So it's going to be rapid fire. So you guys ready? I'll try that one more time. Are you guys ready? All right, cool. It sounds like you're ready. Without further ado, I want to introduce our star-studded cast of judges. So have you guys seen Shark Tank? All right, so this is going to be a lot like Shark Tank, except the judges are way cooler. Way cooler. And I'm really excited to share the stage because our lineup here is just absolutely humbling. Our first judge, or shark, if you will, is all about building relationships around open source software. He's actually at Red Hat, formerly led R&D investments, but currently leads strategic investments, about 2 or 3 strategic investments a year into startup companies to help them grow and scale. So please help me welcome none other than Jesse Wu from Red Hat Strategic Investments. Jesse, thanks so much for being here. We'll have all of our sharks take a seat right here where they will be judging all of our entrepreneurs on the criteria of innovativeness around open source technology, quality of the presentation, and of course, investability, meaning does this idea have legs? Is this something that can really take off and become the next big company? Our next presenter is a partner with Toba Capital. He is an investor as well as a developer. He is a co-founder and CEO of CodeEnvy. Please help me welcome none other than Tyler Jewell, partner with Toba Capital. Tyler, thanks so much for being here. And last but certainly not least, this third judge started his company out of his wife's sewing closet. He wasn't on the lineup on the website, so I don't even know if you guys know he's going to be here. But he has some amazing feedback for entrepreneurs. I already had some conversations with him. We have none other than the co-founder of Red Hat, Mr. Bob Young. Please give it up for Bob Young. Judges, you will find microphones there on the table in front of you, and I'll help direct questions after each of the pitches, and we're going to jump right into it. Now, again, I want to remind you guys, the more energy you give the stage when we welcome these entrepreneurs to the stage, the more energy they're going to give back to you. And it can be really nerve-wracking, right? These people spend 24/7, 365 thinking about building their technology, building their companies. So this is a big moment for them. There's a lot on the line, and it's in front of a big room. So please give the biggest, warmest welcome to our first presenter. This is someone who spent 20 years in litigation prior to starting at this company. She has a ton of experience, taught herself to code. Maybe this sounds like someone that you might know. Please help me welcome Nina from Monax. All right, Nina. This is a really friendly crowd, so your 5 minutes starts now.
Okay, there we go. Thank you very much. I'm Nina Kilbride. I am head of legal engineering at Monax Industries, where we develop ecosystem software applications for industrial use. We use a toolkit involving blockchains, smart contracts, and legal engineering. The blockchains provide the breakthrough technology of distributed peer-to-peer ledgers that give an immutable data stream. This is actually a game changer because in the past we did not have such a secure way to create a distributed network. We add to the blockchain potential smart contracts. That is the ability to conduct computational logic on the data stored in a blockchain architecture. Monax's distinctive feature is our legal engineering. That is, we actually know what to do with a combination of blockchains and smart contracts in order to bring to life all of these use cases that we've heard about that blockchain might be able to enable. Monax legal engineers have had a clear vision for what to do with blockchain since 2014. We've got tech, vision, and traction. In 2014, Monex engineers saw that what was missing from the peer-to-peer structure of blockchains like Bitcoin was the ability for users to configure it the way they needed in order to solve their existing industry problems. Fast forward to 2016, this has been the year of the proof of concept in blockchain space, and Monex Industries has over 200 proof of concepts running on our open source platform that allows anyone to spin up a free blockchain and begin to experiment with this groundbreaking technology. The biggest actors in commerce, market makers, global transactional banks, insurance companies are all learning about blockchain in our sandbox today. What is our roadmap going forward? We have a generic suite of library models that we can recombine in order to articulate that long tail of high-value use cases that sometimes gets termed blockchain hype. But what it takes is careful articulation in engineering in a multidisciplinary structure. I'm going to talk about a use case that inspires me because I'm from Raleigh, and we just lived through yet another ecosystem event. Hurricane Matthew causes tremendous loss at mom and pop Main Street all the way up to global markets. But blockchain allows us to create transparent problem-solving consortia that can solve big problems. We can't stop the hurricanes from coming, but what we can do is use collaboration and synergistic solutions with all the innovative technology that's coming out and that we're talking about here today in order to mitigate the effects of catastrophic events on everybody in the community. It's not a zero-sum solution, it's a synergistic answer. As I said, I'm from Raleigh, and I wanted to talk about why I think right here we are in the crucible of potential for blockchain applications and solutions. We're here because we have technological resources, we have climate data resources, we've got the subject matter experts, and we certainly have developer talent. We have open source chops. When I go to international legal hacker conferences, we talk about how Raleigh is an example for what private, government, and open source partnerships can do in order to elevate everyone in a community, and we see it happening right here. Most importantly, we have experience creating problem-solving consortia. It goes back to roots 50 years ago at Research Triangle Park. We know how to take all of the tools and put them together to get something done. And lastly here, we are at a risk of loss from a disproportionate risk of loss from catastrophic storms. I've lived through a bunch. I've cleaned up a lot of messes as a lawyer and, you know, as a person in my own yard. We have a lot of motivation and a lot of technology in which to do these things here. So at Monex, we have the tech, we have the vision, and we have the traction to bring all of the high-value use cases to life. We have the know-how to get it done, and a Monex ecosystem solution will be coming to an ecosystem near you very soon. Thank you. Thank you.
Nina, excellent job.
Thank
You really kicked us off strong there. Judges, I'm sure you have lots of questions. Bob, would you maybe like to kick things off for us?
Sure. Thank you. And by the way, we're not the, Matt, what was your analogy? We were like the Shark Tank? Is that the one we're supposed to?
Yeah, you're really more like The Voice than
yeah, because we're really friendly. Yeah. They are all winners in our book.
Yes.
But so what I missed in your presentation, to give you another chance to try and get it through to a thick guy like me, of what actually is the monetary value of what you're doing. In other words, I'm a law firm and I'm going to give you money and I'm going to benefit how?
We provide two things to a law firm. Number one, we provide the interoperable software bundles that they will be able to use to articulate use cases. This is not too far off from how lawyers have been modularly building deals and solving problems all along. In addition to that, in order to articulate a functional, very big solution, like a climate risk synergistic model, you're going to have to involve collaboration of subject matter experts. They're not just legal engineers like me and the lawyer coders on my team, but lawyers who are practicing law as well. So that is what we would offer a law firm. However, our software has legs far beyond law. It's in order to articulate any of these commercial data-driven relationships you need. What is going to be required in order to build it so that if things go wrong, well, litigation isn't exactly as ugly as it could have been. Maybe it's not even necessary. And those are things that are actually possible with blockchain technology. Cut all those expenses, automate the back end, limit the amount of litigation that would come out of such a solution, and then allow people to make money with the solution, because what blockchain can do is give us a new way to create an asset class from which to make investments.
Thank you.
Good question, Bob. Jesse or Tyler?
All right, thank you for the presentation. I am no shark, by the way. I will echo his comments on that. I have some questions for you, just very concise ones. What is your ideal price point per year for this, from a law firm specifically?
I would say about $12,000.
Okay, $12,000 ARR per year. And do you anticipate this on a per transaction basis? So each of those law firms representing whatever customers they have, they're going to do this per customer, or is that for the law firm as a whole?
That depends on how the law firm chooses to use our applications.
Mm-hmm.
They may use them in an application where our software is simply a component and we get paid on a per-use base that is configured in smart contracts.
Okay.
However, it may be that they subscribe to our library bundle, in which case they'll get a lot more support, and they're going to be paid by their clients, and we are a component of their solution for their clients.
Okay, all right. So some quick feedback. You're talking about a massive potential, right? Distributed ledgers. It's a major legal problem. Great, awesome, great. So, but when you sell to the law firms, right? Zero in on that. Be real crystal with that buyer persona and narrow your solution so that you can get potentially thousands of those price points. And don't give them so many options. If you give them too many options, then they're going to have to do the conclusions, which is going to be really hard for them. Bring them the answer and narrow it down, keep it focused, and you can get a high volume with that.
Thank you.
Yep.
I love the constructive feedback, getting real-time value up here. Yeah, Jesse.
So I'm no shark either. I'm from Red Hat. And then we're in the open source conference. So obviously, ask you a quick question, open source related. Obviously, open source is good because I know that you guys adopt a lot of technology, and blockchain, a lot of it is rooted in open source technology. How do you balance account stickiness, right? Like adding your unique value proposition to your customers versus that of contributing to open source communities?
I see that. Well, that actually, for me, is a fairly easy line to walk, because I think law is the original open source tool, and the way law has come forth and created commerce in the United States comes from our ability as lawyers and legal engineers to articulate a framework that works. The reason people stay with us is because our software is easy to use, and we understand them, and we understand how they want to put it to life in the real world.
So is all of your software open sourced, or just part of it?
At the moment, our platform is open source. We do have some bespoke models that are on the roadmap to be open source. We don't have anything that we intend at the moment to keep open source, or closed source, I'm sorry.
No, understood. Thanks.
Great questions from the Sharks. Let's give it up one more time for Nina from Monax.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Nina, for leading us off. And thank you again to our judges who are not sharks, but are, of course, very constructive founders themselves. They can relate to what the presenter is going through up here on stage because they themselves have presented their ideas hundreds, if not thousands, hundreds of thousands of times. We have a mic over there.
Testing. Oh, there we go. No one ever bought anything as a result of a presentation, so I'm very sympathetic to these guys.
Yep. Well, it's cool to see how something that can start so small in your wife's sewing closet and turn into something so big with, of course, Red Hat having the footprint that it does now and the impact on the technology world. We are going to keep things rolling. We have another founder that's going to come up here on stage. He is the co-founder and CTO of this company, and that's not the company I thought it was. So we're going to bring up our next presenter, who I had the pleasure of visiting in his office here in the Raleigh-Durham area yesterday. He previously consulted for the FBI and the Navy SEALs, as well as the Department of Defense. But he also has some other passions, like organizing the Durham Longboard Meetup. So if you're interested, you should talk to this founder afterwards. But he is here today to talk about his company, Videnity. Please help me welcome Alan to the stage.
How many of you have ever tried to access your medical information online for yourself or a loved one? Moreover, have you ever tried to move that data from one facility to the other? Well, this is my sister and my dad, and a few years ago he needed an open heart surgery, and she thought it was best for him to go to a different hospital to get different care. And let me tell you, it was like pulling teeth to get the doctors from one hospital to release it so we could transfer to another hospital. And yes, this is a very common story over and over again. I think the problem is really esoteric and loose healthcare standards that cause interoperability issues. And there's little incentive for doctors to share data with patients or other providers. The government wants you to have your data. Medicare, CMS, has spent $24 billion and counting on trying to solve this problem. We actually solved this problem with open standards, something called OAuth 2, and a cool API builder called DJ Mongo that I'm going to get to in a minute. How many people in the audience have heard of Tinder? Yes? How many of you use it? Hope you don't swipe me the wrong way. Okay, have you ever clicked on the button that says log on with Facebook on Tinder, right? Or with an application like Spotify? If you answered yes, then you've used this standard called OAuth, which is really a delegation framework that allows you to delegate access to third-party applications. You authenticate with Facebook, and then you authorize Tinder to have access to your resources, such as your profile picture and your friends and your likes. Well, what is Blue Button? Blue Button is really a marketing term created by the federal government, and it's really the idea of people having access to their own information. A good example of this is mymedicare.gov, where if you're a Medicare beneficiary, you can log on, and there will be a blue button that you can click and download your own medical data to your own hard drive. But that's not really what you want because it's a snapshot in time, and what you really want to do is be able to link that data up to other applications so that you can aggregate things. And that's exactly what we're doing with the MyMedicare API. So all of the information in mymedicare.gov can be used by other applications of the end user's choice. And this is being rolled out next year by MyMedicare, and we built it. But it doesn't have to stop with MyMedicare. It can be the Department of Veterans Affairs, Duke MyChart, all manner of patient portals, Medicaids. It's a very large market. And so we focus over here in the green area where is essentially the OAuth 2 server technology and the API technology. Now, I talked about how OAuth can be used to secure these APIs, but what I didn't talk about was the data formats. For the MyMedicare project, we're using a new standard that has a lot of momentum called HL7 Fire, and it's a RESTful API, and it's document-oriented. But sometimes we're not always doing Fire, and we're not always doing healthcare, and we've developed this tool to build APIs without writing code. You can use this in conjunction with the OAuth server or alone. It's written in Django, it uses MongoDB, but it essentially lets you create an API in just a few minutes with just a few clicks of a mouse. So here's just an example. Meet Joe. He's trying to investigate a possible mercury water contamination problem. He wants to set up 100 remote devices. He needs to report that data all up to a central database, and we're going to show how he can build the backend infrastructure to make this work in literally 5 minutes. Actually sooner than that. So this is an example. We're creating a Mongo database and collection, an initial document, and after that's done, we're going to create an API. So we're going to just say we don't care about authentication. It's public. We're not publishing the URL. And we're defining a API to read the data out. And now we're going to create a write API to post the data in, basically for uploading. And we're going to define a schema that says, hey, the values have to be right. So if you put a mercury reading that's way out of whack, it's not going to allow it. So it's hard to see here, but I'm using the API. I'm uploading readings, samples, into the database. And if I provide a mercury level that's out of whack, it'll reject it. So it's adding something to MongoDB that it doesn't have, which is essentially schema control and an API framework. So it kind of makes MongoDB RESTful. And you can pull the data out as JSON. You can pull it out as CSV. This is just scratches the surface of what you can do with this. The silver tsunami is imminent. There's a lot of people, the baby boomers are beginning to use a lot of medical services. We need to get the data moving. There is a regulatory requirement for a patient-facing API, and Medicare alone is 25% of the national budget. But a lot of these tools that we're talking about are not specific to healthcare. You can apply this to projects that are not healthcare related. And where we're headed, well, we have had no institutional investment. We're on target to have $250K in revenue in 2016, and we want to move to a SaaS model, providing OAuth tools and API creation tools. And I want this audience at All Things Open to understand how easy it is to build an API. So if you follow this link, bit.ly, you be the DJ, or see us at booth 16, you can win a turntable and 3 albums. All you have to do is create an API with this tool. There's an Amazon machine image that's like a virtual machine, so you can use what you saw there in just a couple minutes. You just spin up the instance and you're good to go. So thank you very much.
Great job, Alan. Alan, great job. Thank you so much. Sharks, even though you're not sharks.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation, right? So obviously personal health record is a big problem, and data interoperability is an even bigger problem. So walking through a presentation, I'm curious about, and you have some revenue, which segment of the market are you targeting to? Who is your customer? Insurance companies or?
Medicare providers, Medicare is one of our key clients, but Medicaid organizations and healthcare providers. Insurance companies are also a target because they're all providing these patient portals, right? And there's this regulatory requirement now to create patient-facing APIs, and this is the way it should be done.
Okay, understood.
Alan, nice to meet you. All right, nice presentation. So the average price point that you're selling this at, I'm going to keep asking this here.
It depends, right, on really the size of the customer, but we could imagine that for a very large customer that this would be, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Per year?
Yeah.
Okay, and then those smaller customers?
I would say, it being open source software, zero, if they're not paying for it, but if they want service, we'll probably be interested in it at probably $50,000.
Okay, so in the $50,000 to $100,000 price point range, you got to get like 30 to 100 customers to have a kind of an interesting business here, right?
Well, I think if you're talking about state Medicaid organizations or large insurance, the price would be much higher than that.
Okay, so I think
on the population under management.
Right. So for your particular business model, in order for this to stick and to protect your moat on this, you're going to have to zero in on how you acquire those customers, right? And so you're obviously starting off with a go-to-market of, hey, let's show you how easy it is to make APIs, but you're going to be penetrating these organizations really deeply, and the engineers are usually not the decision makers, right? So how do you get those 100 organizations to adopt this and prevent other competitors from having a different API that is maybe more attractive? And that's what you're going to have to keep in mind as you build your business model.
Great feedback. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to disagree with my esteemed colleague and say, I think you're on exactly the right technique here, because I really need a turntable. So when I use your API and I win your turntable, I think it'll be brilliant. So what I like about it is the engineers, you're right, are not the decision makers, but they sure are the influencers. And the value of open source frequently, and I'm a evil capitalist at heart. I'm not an open source ideologue at all. And as an evil capitalist, I'm always looking for low-cost ways to get into the market, to bring customers to me instead of spending the money to go and find the customers. And if you can get all these smart guys in this audience, many of whom are working for your target customers, to engage with you, then when it comes in their own internal debates about how they solve their, and I always mispronounce it, OAuth, how do you pronounce it? OAuth, thank you. Anyway, how you implement OAuth properly, some kid in the back of the room is going to say, hey, I just got a turntable from the guys who can help us solve that. So I like it. Thank you.
Good feedback. I like the different perspectives from the judges here. And Alan, I love the presentation. Any other closing thoughts or feedback from the judges?
Well, I don't know if you mentioned it before, but we're going to get some private time with each of the companies afterwards, and I'm looking forward to that. So thank you.
Let's give it up one more time for Alan. Yes, so after all of these presentations, we will be deliberating the judges as well as the founders of the companies here that presented on stage. We'll be deliberating in the back room, and we'll be announcing the winner at 5:30 this afternoon, which of course will get some real cash dollars in their pockets to continue development, but as well as the esteem and goodwill that goes with winning All Things Open with all of these amazing people in the audience. But again, I do want to stress that if you see it a way that you can be building with these tools on stage, or you do have feedback for these founders, please reach out to them as you see them here today and tomorrow and maybe tonight at the happy hour to have a chance to actually have a conversation and learn more about their technology. We are going to keep things rolling. We have another presenter who first knew that he was entrepreneurial when he was in the Navy. So he was in the Navy, and I think installed the first Microsoft LAN system on the eastern seaboard. But he was, in general, sort of a troublemaker, you might say. He was a little bit entrepreneurial. He liked to be a little bit different and think outside the box, which has led him to really thrive in his new role as, well, not that new role, his CTO and co-founder of Openoid. Please help me welcome Jim Salter.
May I steal a little of your table space here? Hi, folks. My name's Jim Salter. Like Matt mentioned, I first realized that I had a passion for this kind of stuff when I was in the Navy. And the word that he probably missed was disruptive. I was a little late to realizing what open source was, but disruption was pretty much in my blood. As far as I know, that was the first local area network that was in the Navy, at the very least on the East Coast. That was way back in the early 90s, 1993, I think. And I basically about tripled throughput through the planning and estimating shop that I was working in by replacing proprietary software that was designed for nothing but that purpose, but really, really sucked at it, with a simple network and a generic commodity word processing program, WordPerfect, and just a server that you save things on. And you could save your jobs you were working on in one share that everybody could write to, and the shop supervisor could move them when they were planned and approved and perfect into a read-only share that anybody could copy from. So it was great, like I said, about triple throughput, and I got some of the worst evals of my Navy career during the period that I did this, because it turns out the Navy doesn't like disruption. By contrast, I got the best evals of my career when I got in a fist fight about a year later. They liked that. It was leadership. Okay, so, but, moving on a little bit more to present time, most of the folks who know me through either my writing or my public speaking. I present at conferences like this one in Scale, and I'm going to be at Netherlands for NLUG later on this year. And I write for publications like Ars Technica and OpenSource.com, usually about pretty geeky stuff. I like file systems. I like networking. I like the things way underneath the hood that make everything go. Openoid is not my first business. And so I really want to talk to you folks about my actual product, Sanoid, the thing at the top. But these folks right here, which I'm going to propose we call them the dolphin tank, since they're more friendly. The dolphins want to hear about the business, so I need to brag about myself and talk about my business and its goals a little bit too. Openoid's not my first business. My first business is Jera System Solutions, now Jera Systems LLC, because I finally figured out what grown-ups do and incorporate. And Jera Systems is your basic standard integrator that serves small businesses. And the way that came about is between my time in the Navy and working, being a working sysadmin in very small business in the 90s when I got out of the Navy, I learned what small businesses needed and the fact that they weren't getting it. So I was like, I should start a business to actually provide this to people and it will be good. And it was good. A lot of people in business, they like to ignore the small business, say, oh, small business is a pain in the butt. Everything's different and all their tools are old, it's crap, you have to just go through so much with every one of them, to actually sell these tiny little jobs. But I feel like they're missing a lot of opportunity. I mean, we got the numbers up here on the board. There's 5 million employers in the United States, small business employers, mind you. There's 22 million sole proprietorships, and every single one of those folks has some money to spend if you're selling the right things for what they need. And they love you if you actually do that. I don't really necessarily expect anybody to read the awesome brags up there, but these are some of the things my customers have said about me, and they say that because you actually come in and rather than trying to shovel something designed for mid-market or enterprise under their nose, maybe add some frippery to it and call it Small Business Edition and charge through the nose. If you actually take care of their needs, they notice the difference and it's worthwhile for the both of you. So why Openoid? I kind of covered this already. I was in small business. That taught me what small business needed. Then I started Jera Systems to serve the small businesses, and after having done that for 15 years, I knew that nobody was really doing the right thing for the integrators and the resellers either. They need help too. They need the right tools and the right systems to walk into these small businesses and say with confidence, okay, I can take care of you. I can make sure you don't lose data. I can make sure that we can talk about the terms the big boys talk about. Instead of just saying, okay, do we have backups? Let's talk about recovery point objective. Let's talk about recovery time objective. Let's not just say that you're dead forever, if something happens to your server or not. Let's talk about, minimizing the actual impact and having you back up and running in under an hour. So, these are the problems. Like I said, downtime, data loss, and these things are going to happen. Particularly, again, in the small business world. If you're small business, you have to work with what you got. And what you've got is often horribly designed tools that you can't get away from. I can talk all that we want to about how great Sanoid, my product, is, and how it's specifically designed for small business, and it works for small business, and everything's great, and all those things are true, but nobody's actually using Sanoid in the small business at that level. What they're really using is QuickBooks and Microsoft Office. And wow, I missed the 1 minute. My time is up, so we are super gonna hurry here. Let me demonstrate really quickly. Does everybody here know what Locky is? Has everybody heard of Locky? Locky is ransomware. It's crypto ransomware. What it does is it encrypts all of your data with a key that you don't have and some person in Eastern Europe does, and they want you to spend about $1,000 in order to get the key from them. Normally, your response to this is you try to restore from a backup. If you have a backup, you're down for a day or 2 or 3 if you're lucky, and a lot of people just give up and pay the ransom and hope the key comes to them in a week. This is my approach to dealing with Locky. If we could roll the video. If we could. Wow, apparently we went right past the video. Cool. So we're booting a Windows 2012 server on Sanoid here. Sanoid is that little box that you see on the judge's table, and it's hosting this virtual machine. This is a Windows Server 2012. You can see we've got some super valuable data here, which is actually PDFs of some of the articles I wrote for Ars Technica. And I just double-clicked the Locky installer because I'm not very bright. And you see really quickly that decrypt thing popped up there on the screen. And now you see the ransomware message. You notice all those PDF icons changed to notepad icons because all you're going to see is encrypted CRUD with a header on there that's this guy telling you, hey, you got to give me money if you ever want your data back. Like I said, this is normally very catastrophic. This hits everybody from tiny mom and pop small businesses to hospitals. This has been huge, hitting hospitals in the last few years, and it's incredibly disruptive. Now what we're doing here, you just saw a console pop up on the host that Windows Server 2012 was running on. We looked at a list of snapshots. The one highlighted is the most recent automatic hourly snapshot, and we just rolled back to it, and we have now booted back up again. Locky is gone. Our data is back. When we log in, we can see our PDF icons or PDFs again. We open them up, everything is fine. Like it never happened. We delete the crap, we're done. In a nutshell, that's what Sanoid is.
Great job, Jim. I know you had to rush through a couple slides there at the end, so I imagine we have some questions from the judges. Bob?
Yeah, I think we're just taking turns going back and forth here. You started with how you love small businesses, and from an early age as a businessman, I learned to hate small businesses. Mostly because I was one, and I knew how flaky I was as a businessman, and I wouldn't want me as a customer. But I have a question for you. This is a little bit off topic, but it relates to how you're thinking about your business. In my experience, it turns out all big companies are actually a huge collection of small businesses. So you think you're dealing with Shell Oil, but you're actually dealing with the manager of the Shell Oil refinery in New Jersey. And he has his own budget, and he thinks and operates like a small business because he doesn't actually have the glass house in wherever Shell Oil is based, looking over him, and he's trying to solve a local problem. How much out of interest of your business, either with JRS or with this thing, is actually not small businesses, but small divisions of large companies?
A fair amount of it. Most of it is true small businesses, but I mismanaged my time pretty badly, so we missed the latter end of the slides. One of the target markets for this is what I call skunk works, which is exactly what you're talking about. I see very frequently within mid-market or enterprise organizations, you get a small, very agile, very active team that isn't getting served by the kind of monolithic IT department that handles the whole enterprise, and they get given a budget to just do their own thing. And they're one of the big targets for this also because they can have the same capabilities that in theory their big IT structure might provide but aren't working for them, but have it in a budget and on a time frame that actually works for skunk works.
Okay, so I'll pass you over to Tyler, who will ask you the questions about how the numbers work.
I don't need to ask you the price point, but what I am going to tell you is that you're going to need to zero in on your supportability of a solution like this. So your advantage versus your competitors is going to come to a lower cost of production and a lower price point that you can pass along. But then you're going to have basically a frictionless support model to have some sort of margins here, and we didn't get into that, and that's what I'd like to learn more about.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your support model?
So the support model actually is kind of the revenue model in general. Right now I have a big advantage because I'm the one who brought it to market, and other people don't know that they could possibly be selling it. Everything about Sanoid is open source. The underlying technologies like KVM, of course, is GPL, and ZFS is licensed under the Cuddle. The Sanoid code itself, the stuff that I developed, is GPL v3. So in theory, anybody could be either A, doing it for themselves, which I already do have a fair amount of open source adoption, or selling it directly as an integrator and cutting me out. My long-term model is much like Bob's there for Red Hat. The idea is that there's a certain set of people who are going to say, I want the support of the person who actually made this. I want the actual Openoid people, and those are my customers.
Okay, thank you.
Good feedback.
So, tell me about your partnership strategy, right? So we all understand that the small and medium businesses actually increase the cost of sales because you got to penetrate each one of them, and they might be slightly different. So for you to reach that broad penetration, partnership with someone that already has feet on the ground will be helpful. But they will also cut you out because your product already comes at a lower price point. So tell me how you think about that.
So my strategy there is, I think that because ultimately right now I am basically a one-person shop. I do work with I'm not putting these things together in my basement. I do have subcontractors that help with build out and sometimes do installations and whatever. But for the most part, it's me. That limits my reach upwards into the market right now. You can only go so far before somebody says, well, I don't want to have my business dependent on a single person who might, the saying is step in front of a bus one day. That's something that I'm going to need to overcome in the future. Starting out with that, targeting small businesses helps. My very next step is I really want to target integrators and resellers themselves because I can hit them at the price point that they're already paying for just like a server from Dell or HP. It's not a stretch for them to buy these things from me. Some of them, ultimately, I realize, are going to say, hey, well, we'll just do the thing ourselves. What they can't get for that is they're going to be missing out on some of the branding. They can't say that, this is an Openoid, certified set of hardware for what that's worth. And a lot of these folks, most of these integrators, they're not really interested in diving down to the absolute lowest cost. What they're interested in is the easiest thing to take a thing, turn it around, sell it, install it, and make their money on. It doesn't matter to them so much if they could potentially build it themselves for a couple $100 less if they have to go through the effort of figuring out the right hardware, building it for themselves, doing their own branding on it. There will be some of those folks, but their reach is in turn going to be limited because they're going to be too far down in the weeds.
So as a follow-up question, you talk about the worth of your brand, obviously showing adoption, right? That will be very powerful as a negotiation tool with the SIs. How are you thinking about using open source to facilitate that? That's also a feedback point.
And we are down to the last 30 seconds, so your 30-second answer to that question.
I'm using open source for that right now. I am promoting the actual code on GitHub. I'm getting open source adoption. I'm trying to use that to build the brand and the value of the brand. I want people to know what Openoid is, what Sanoid is, know that they know people that are using it and think it's great.
Good answer. Let's give it up one more time for Jim from Openoid.
Thank you.
Great feedback, judges. Thank you so much for sticking with us. We have our fourth and final presenter here in this awesome open pitch competition. This founder actually started the company in France. He recently moved to the US. Prior to starting the company, he was working selling software to governments at companies like HP and Novell. They have three co-founders. We have one of them here today with us. He is the co-founder and COO. Please help me welcome Frank Karasis from Open Datasoft.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, guys. So my name is Frank Karasis. I am Open Datasoft co-founder and also Chief Operating Officer. In the eyes of a shark or dolphin or whatever the animal you call it, investor, Open Datasoft operates in a very boring market, government. Why boring? Because sales cycles are so long, processes are everywhere, and innovation is maybe not the best word to define this market. But things are changing because government, thanks to the pressure of transparency, open data, and also data-driven policies, they start to open their data. They need to do that. So the idea with Open Datasoft is to be able to help those governments because right now they were using costly on-premise software. So at Open Datasoft, we are a civic tech startup. Civic tech meaning that we help government by selling a cloud-based turnkey platform for helping them leverage their data. And when I say leverage their data, it means leverage their internal data, so breaking their internal silos, publishing data, APIs, so for internal use, but also for the public good, and it's open data. So that's what we do. So what's our secret sauce? Our secret sauce is ease of use. If you know how to use a tool like Excel, then with our platform, you will be able to publish data and also having automatic APIs. And it's very API-oriented, as in the previous pitch. So we also use the OAuth and all the things to make these APIs open and available for any developer. What's our business model? Pretty simple. So as a cloud-based company, we are on the recurring revenue business model. So we sell annual subscription to our customers, and our pricing is based on volume of data. So the more data you have, the more you pay. So depending on the type of data, if it's static data or sometimes it could be dynamic data like census data. What's the market size? Well, the market size is huge. It's government. IDC says that government, state and local, they spend $25 billion just this year on IT. And they say that 24% of this amount is on civic tech. And civic tech is increasing 14 times more than the traditional, any traditional software tool. And Gartner says that by 2 years, 30% of the data coming from the government will be treated like open data. Not to mention Forbes that mentions that civic tech is the next big thing. So right now, demo time. So let's see the platform in action, and we are lucky because we have a customer just here. So it's the Siena County of Durham. So, sorry. So can you launch the video? Thanks. So in this case, we will use the restaurant inspection dashboard. So all you see here is a live demo recorded, but you see open source widget with heat maps. Here you can see the different grades. So you can sort by grade A, B, C being the poorest. And then you see the violation explorer. And as you can hear, I'm not American, I'm French. So here I'm going to search on one of the best restaurants in town, Burger King. I told you, I love good food. So if you search any Burger King restaurant, you retrieve a Burger King restaurant, and then you can see that they have a very good score, 97. And if you want to see what the inspector says, you can just click. So you can go on their website, and you will have this information. So as I'm not very familiar with the Whopper, at least I know that it could be safe to go and eat there. Maybe not good, but safe. So what it makes is that the city of Durham, with our platform, has been able to open their data not only to citizens, but also to developers. Because if I want to reuse this data, if I am a civic developer, or if I am TripAdvisor or Yelp, I can do it thanks to the open APIs. Some words on the competition. Getting back to investors, I think now Gov investment rocks. So if you see some fundraising in the civic tech in the last, let's say, couple of months, you see very, very big amounts. And by the way, those guys are all our competitors. So how can we beat them? First, ease of use, I told you. So UX, a great UX experience. Second is also using open source technology. So all our platform is based on open source technologies like Elasticsearch. We are a very strong contributor to Elasticsearch. And all our front end is open source. So we also believe that using the developers to build apps thanks to our APIs is one of the key, because those guys, they try to build their own apps. Some words on the company. So 40 people now. We were 10 people in last year. And we have a monthly growth of 10%. So our MRR is raising 10% per month. And I've just moved to Boston 2 months ago to launch the company. Some words on the customers. So we have 85 customers worldwide in 10 countries. We've just launched the US a few months ago. Here, based in North Carolina, we have an office in Cary. And guess what? In a few months, we have 4 customers here. 3 cities, Chapel Hill, Durham, Cary, and 1 state-level project. So I think it's pretty good for a start. And if I remember well, United States, you have 50 states, correct? Last words on funding. So I'm really glad to share with you that since yesterday, we have our first A series. So we raised $5.5 million with 2 new investors. One is Astor Capital, the other one being Salesforce Ventures. So those guys seems also to be interested into civic tech and cloud-based, of course. So last words, if you are struggling with your data and you belong to any kind of company, don't hesitate to come and see me if you want to share your data, publish APIs. And for investors, you know that a Series A leads to a Series B, so more than happy to have a chat with you guys. Thank you.
Great job, Frank.
Thanks.
And as you can see, very different stage company than some of our other companies that have presented here today. But we wanted to give you guys all a good look at what company growth can look like at multiple stages. I'm sure our judges have some questions for you. Jesse or Bob, do you want to kick us off? Or Tyler, do you want to kick us off? Tyler, why don't you kick us off? Start from the middle and work our way out.
So, what's your price point?
What? Well, we have a ACV of $25,000.
And that's measured on data consumption?
Yeah,
or?
it's measured on data consumption.
Okay.
So number of data set and data consumption. Yeah,
All right.
correct.
Okay, so for everyone out there who might be thinking about starting their business, the reason why I immediately asked your price point is because when you know the price point, right, you can then very quickly understand how many potential buyers at that price point every year, and then that's how the size of the market is here, right? It bottoms up. But also, more importantly, when you have a price point at $25,000, it dictates your sales costs. So at $25,000 at best, your sales cost for this could be $5,000 a year for that, right? And you can't hire someone. So you're either going to have to get somebody who can do 30 of these deals a year, right? Or it's got to be a little bit more self-service. And so my question for you is, in light of the capitalization of your competitors on that front versus your own capitalization, how are you going to compete to get enough volume at that price point that you're targeting there?
Well, so as we come from Europe, the way we are able to raise funds is not the same story.
Yeah, you got all sorts of
so you know that.
advantages.
So our other competitors, they do the land and expand strategy. So they use sales and they put sales everywhere in every state. So I think our value added is to have a really ease of use technology. We have a better technology. We leverage all the best open source technologies
so
like.
So you're hoping for governments to adopt it without talking to you first?
No, in fact, they are doing tenders, but sometimes we are below some amounts. For example, we've done those sales without. So some sales they had tenders, some others they don't have. For example, we've won 4 customers here, and there was no a tender for every customer. So the price point, because our average sale is $25K, but the lowest price is around $12K, and the highest are 6 figures. So depending on the size, we can also sign bigger deal. So to be able to play against those guys, at first they have evangelized the market. That's cool. So we're just after them. And also they don't have a really turnkey platform. So we don't sell any consulting. We don't want to do that. We want the off-the-shelf platform, no consulting. And we also are in the developer ecosystem. So we open the front end for any developers to be able to reuse the data and then build their own application. We don't want to be in this app business. And those guys, they are more in the app business. They want to sell the finance app, the police app, and so on. So we are more a data hub.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Great question, Tyler. And we have time for a quick question from Bob and a quick question from Jesse.
Okay, sure. Just quickly, how are you finding customers? Are customers finding you because you're an open source solution, or do you have to call on every government on the planet?
Well, we were lucky because we had a lot of inbounds. So
Where did they come from? How did you get inbounds?
Well, so we do our homework, meaning that we are in every Gov-related event where there are open data, open Gov in the White House, and the same in Europe. And most of the biggest, and even the smallest city, they know that they need to be transparent with their citizens. So in some way, they need to publish their data, to be data-driven. So they are looking for Google and say, open data platform, sharing data.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good question.
So you talk about frictionless onboarding and do not sell consulting services. You showcase one of your customers, the government dorm. How long did it take them to be fully on board with all the disparate data sources to that dashboard they show?
Well, very quickly. It's a matter of days. So depending on the more difficult is to grab information from the different departments. So to convince the police department, the budget department to let the data coming into the platform. But the technical part is very easy. So we had a customer here, Chapel Hill, not to mention them, or Kerry, and they were ready in few weeks. So, and without any help from external consulting firm. And that's the model. We don't want to have any complex consulting to put in place the platform.
And then how long is your typical sales cycle?
Well,
From
depending on
conversation one to from leads to revenue.
well, it could be as quick as 2 months, and if it's a whole tender, it could be 6 months, for example.
Okay, so I can't let it go because because you guys have raised a Series A, I'm going to be a little bit more tougher on you.
Yeah. You're shocked now.
Sorry. You cannot get away with saying that you want your platform to be completely self-service from a consultative basis, but sit there and saying that you're responding to RFPs. You have to rationalize that. If you want to get to your Series B, right, you're going to have to rationalize that point because it is not consistent. So I'm holding you to a higher standard on that.
Okay.
All right? Very good.
Thanks.
Good feedback
Congratulations on
from the
your funding, by the
judges and a really great pitch from our final presenter, Frank from Open Data Soft. I want to say thank you one more time to all of our amazing judges. They did a fantastic job. Jesse, Tyler, Bob, thank you guys so much. Let's give a huge round of applause to our judges. They will be deliberating now with each other, but also meeting individually with the presenters here. We'll be announcing the winner at 5:30, so make sure you come back here to hear who is the winner of the first open pitch competition. Thank you, guys.
For those of you that did not see the startup pitch competition, this was big, and it's the first time we've ever done this, and I'm going to do a check presentation here to the winner, but I do want them just to say a real quick couple of words before we announce the winners, okay? Go ahead, Tyler.
Well, thank you. We had 4 wonderful presentations this afternoon. We were looking to judge them on their innovativeness around open source, the investability of the company as a whole, and the quality of the presentation. And we encountered 4 companies in different markets with different products and different stages of development. One of them had actually just raised their Series A, and others were still in the early stages of development of their product. But all of the presenters did a fantastic job, and we saw one thing that was consistent across all the companies. They were all using open source at the core of their platform, both as a way to innovate by providing new delivery mechanisms for their product, and also in using it to lower the cost of production of their product so that they can pass along that total cost of ownership to their customers that's there. And so this was one thing that was binding them all together, and consistencies that we saw.
Yeah, so like Tyler was saying, it was an extremely difficult decision. I mean, we didn't have enough time here. We invited them to a private room to ask them more questions before we can deliberate. So it is very nice to see that in this city where Red Hat as a company start to flourish, to see everybody coming here for open source and then see the 4 companies together using open source technologies in different ways to solve their customer problems. And to us, it is a very humbling moment to see so much innovation coming out from this city, coming out from such an open source model. So in a bit, we'll announce, Tal will announce the winners. I think all of them have done a fantastic job in telling their stories, creating their pitch, and creating their company. And then all the best.
Yeah, what they said.
Good. Bob, thank you. Thank you very much. And again, just really quickly, the reason we did this is because so many people, when they think of open source, they do not make the connection open source to venture capital, investment, starting a company, running a business, connecting it to a revenue model, or thinking a revenue model is a feasible option for them. We want to begin to change that mindset and get you thinking in ways, if you're considering starting a business, and you happen to, the majority of your business is open source, or you make the majority of your code available via an open source license, that it's not an impossibility, that there's hope, that people have done it before, and people are currently doing it. So we're attempting to change the mindset. So with that being said, I do want to announce the winners right now. I will start. 3rd place, Videnity, Alan Vyers. Alan? Thank you. Cool. Yep. Come on up. Great concept. Alan, just get you to stand right there, because what we're going to do, we're going to take some pictures after this too. 2nd place is Open Data Soft. Open Data Soft. Thank you. And 1st place, our winner of the first ever All Things Open Startup Pitch Competition is Openoid and Jim Salter. So come on up, Jim. Very cool. Anyone comments or any further comments from our judges? You sure? Bob, you're so diplomatic. You're so
Sure. I just wanted to compliment my fellow judges here. They actually know what they're doing, so I got a free ride. And what I'm pleased about was our dynamic where we didn't choose the most professional of the team. We chose the team with the most passion for their product and their clearest vision to the value that they were doing, and that's what we're paid to do.
Very good. Okay. All right. So with all that being said, we're actually going to do some pictures after we leave. Let me finish up with just a couple of announcements.